balloons, bazookas, boobies, bosoms, boulders, cans, hooters, knockers, melons, honkers, jugs, rack, tatas, tits, torpedoes, guns, bust, doorknobs, coconuts, and our favorite one, the girls. Welcome to the All About Breastfeeding show, where your host, Lori, highlights mothers just like yourself and goes beyond the surface questions and digs deep so they share not only their joys and happiness in their daily breastfeeding life, but also their pain and struggles and how they worked through them.
Episode number 115. Welcome to All About Breastfeeding, the place where the girls hang out. I am your host, Lori Jill Eisenstadt, IBCLC, which stands for International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. A few things have happened since I began doing some research for this season's tour of the world of breastfeeding. I wanted to be able to take my listeners on a tour, if you will, of breastfeeding around the globe, from ancient to current times. I knew that I would be covering times when babies were wet nursed and cross nursed. I knew that I would be covering times when babies were removed from their biological mother's arms and given to other women to nourish them. And I knew that there were times in history when wet nurses were just your average citizen. Some were paid very well, and others averaged to even low wages. I knew there were historical times and places where they moved from their home to live in nice homes of their employer, and times when they were so revered they were treated like royalty. I also knew that babies were wet nursed for very sad reasons, like when their mother was very ill and could not nurse, or did not have any milk for them or enough milk for their baby. I also knew that babies were wet nursed because their mother died. I know that babies were wet nursed as a matter of convenience, so women could conceive lots more babies, because many years ago, not a lot of babies survived childhood. So if a woman had 12 babies, and because males were so important, perhaps a male or two survived childhood. The other reason babies were wet nursed was basically for a matter of convenience and vanity, as women wanted to be able to fit into the tight clothes, and breastfeeding did not allow for this. So, as I'm doing my research and putting much of what I already know into context, I am also learning some new things, and most importantly, I am actually sitting and contemplating and ruminating about what I already knew, but have not slowed down enough to take time to really think of what it means to me and to society as we live in now. A few shows back, you may remember me making personal commentary when talking about how when wet nursing became so popular that there became a need to have it regulated, with businesses opening up that literally contracted with wet nurses. This led to Big Brother, so to speak, and in this case, the Parisian police authorities, who created a municipal bureau of wet nurses, taking the wet nurses away from making their own way of doing business and collecting money to big business hiring them, having contracts, and having control over their money. You heard me making snide commentary about how the more things change, the more they stay the same. Well, as I continued putting this show together, I was reminded of even more similarities that make me realize that the way things were centuries ago are not really that much different than they are now. I'm not putting my stamp of approval on mothers abandoning their babies, not at all. However, the realization that we think so horribly of a woman nowadays who might abandon her baby, and that we actually make it an official criminal offense, is not much different than women years ago. Many women abandon their babies for a variety of reasons. Perhaps they wanted to keep making money as a wet nurse. Perhaps they were a single mom and could not afford to take care of their baby. Perhaps the baby was an unwanted by a society that only valued male babies. I realized that my thoughts drifted off to thinking this: As awful as it is, years ago when a mom abandoned her baby, at least the mom did not face criminal charges, and at least her baby was still breastfed. When that happens in modern times, awful things happen. The mother is sought out, brought up on criminal charges, her baby is put into a foster care system, and formula fed. I started thinking, which is worse, then or now? I started thinking, are we better off now than when we were before? Aren't we supposed to be learning from history? Because if we don't, we're apt to repeat it. Centuries ago, some women choose to not breastfeed for social reasons. Many of these women were found to be of the upper class. For them, breastfeeding was considered unfashionable in the sense that it not only prevented these women from being able to wear the fashionable clothing of their time, but it was also thought to ruin their figures. There was a time when women wore tight-fitting corsets that changed their normal waistline into an hourglass figure. Have you ever seen those pictures? This pushed their breasts up and smashed the nipples against the corset material, causing them to flatten. This wardrobe was totally not conducive to breastfeeding. It took a lot of effort to tighten that corset, and so they certainly were not what we would call breastfeeding friendly. In addition, it would be hard for a woman to fit into her tight corset if she was breastfeeding and kept some of her weight on postpartum. Like it or not, agree with it or not, there are enough modern-day moms who base their decision to breastfeed or not on their own ideas of body image. They know or have heard that they may keep on some baby weight while breastfeeding, that they have to eat many more calories, that their pre-pregnancy figure does not come back while they're breastfeeding, that their breasts will be saggy when they are done. They are afraid of stretch marks of breasts being different sizes. Some moms don't even begin to breastfeed for fear of some or all of the above happening to them. Some moms start off breastfeeding, things are going really well, but they're frustrated at having to keep up their caloric intake or the differences between breasts, as one sometimes makes more milk than the other, or their baby prefers one side over the other, which causes them to be visibly different sizes. So they stop breastfeeding. Not that there's a right or wrong, however, what this is highlighted to me says the more things change, the more things stay the same. There is one area that shines brightly and stands out and separates mom from centuries ago from moms of modern times. It's the attitude toward wet nursing. While there were outliers in each country and at different times in history, I would say that women who were wet nurses were more often looked up to, thought of in high regard, and often they were revered by society and the families they worked for. They received special treatment such as a nice place to live, a large salary, frequently more than their male counterpart. It has been interesting sharing with you an overview of wet nursing in ancient times, ranging from societal reasons, cultural attitudes, medical necessity, and yes, a matter of convenience. Breasts were used to being seen in public, and there was a respect for the female breasts, and it was understood that their job was to make milk for babies, as well as be used for sexual pleasure. We have sadly moved away from this thinking, and this is why we have such strong opposition to mothers being seen in public breastfeeding their babies. This is because the way our modern society views breasts is that they are for sexual pleasure only. As one of my good friend Tressa says, what is wrong with acknowledging the truth that breasts can be used for sexual pleasure and for providing milk for our babies? Why does it have to be one thing or the other? I wholeheartedly agree with Tressa and feel, why can't we just call a spade for goodness sake? There is so much written about slaves and or poor woman nursing wealthier women's babies. They left their home and their family to take care of someone else's baby. One might wonder, just why would they do that? Because when money was scarce and they could make more money than their male counterparts, and if they were a wet nurse to an elite family, even better. But how could these women leave their babies with other women to care for? Perhaps the care was as good as they would have cared for their own baby, and perhaps the care was less than optimal. Moms now have child care concerns just as they did years ago. We might be quick to judge, however, we can really relate it to the current times that we live in. Often it takes 2 salaries to keep a household going. Moms leave their babies with other child care or daycare. They leave them with bottles of milk, breast milk or formula, so someone else is caring for their babies and someone else is feeding their babies for a better part of the day. How is this any different than what was happening with moms a few centuries ago? They too needed to bring in money to take care of their families. Centuries ago, babies were wet nursed as there was no milk formulas or bottles or pumps, so it was a matter of necessity. Now moms can choose to feed their babies formula or pump milk, and they can get milk from a bottle. The more things change, the more things stay the same. As I continue to read about breastfeeding and wet nursing, it really brings home what I already know, that mothers are always trying to do the best for their children and for their families. The culture was different years ago. The finances in healthcare and living conditions were different. This created a culture that caused moms to make decisions that were slightly different than the ones moms make today as far as working and childcare. Perhaps they gave their babies to be fed by another mom, but in reality, mothers then were not much different than mothers now. All are striving to do the best job they can and be the good enough mother. As I looked further into wet nursing in different countries, there were some differences, and yet there was more that was the same than there were differences. I could review other countries and their infant feeding practices. However, I have begun to see quite clearly that the differences are not so great, and there is no reason to take each country or time period and give it their own spotlight. Next week, we are going to bring us up to the beginning of the 20th century. We are going to come full circle with wet nursing as it drastically fell out of favor when animal milk and refrigeration and formulas became easily available and convenient. When wet nursing used to be a matter of necessity, it now became a matter of convenience. And when this happened, because mothers now had an easier way to be separated from their babies, because they could feed them animal milk from a bottle, wet nursing rather quickly went by the wayside. This drastic decline made way for a whole new way of feeding babies. I look forward to diving into this age of convenience with you next week. Until then, bye-bye. Have you heard that Phoenix, Arizona is blessed with an amazing birthing center? Baby Moon Inn Birth Center is the best option for families who want access to midwifery care in and out of a hospital setting. You can experience birth in a comfortable home-like setting where natural birth is the focus. Laboring in water, being able to walk outside during labor, and enjoy the beautiful garden. This is what birth can be like for you. There is so much more to learn about Baby Moon. The staff would love to have the opportunity to meet you and would like to extend an invitation for you to attend a free Choices in Childbirth class and a tour of the birth center. All you need to do is call 602-314-7755. That's 602-314-7755 and ask for the tour dates. You can also go to allaboutbreastfeeding.biz/podcast. And on the right-hand side of the page, you will see a link that will bring you to the calendar and you can sign up for the tour yourself. When you come in for the tour, make sure that you tell them you found out about it from the All About Breastfeeding podcast, and you will be given a very lovely free gift.